one of the things that they spoke on was the failure of Star Wars Outlaws. And the phrase that was given was that from their perspective, Star Wars Outlaws didn't do well because the Star Wars IP overall is struggling.
That's half and half. Star Wars is going through a burnout because they're trying to overextend things where to the point where they should just actually be ending them. But that's what happens when you get bought by Disney. Disney wants theme parks. They want plushies. They want everything.
Yeah.
They want the brand and the signage everywhere. So you need to milk, get some more milk out the cow. The Clone Wars overly extensions, like we've seen it. Like even Bad Batch, which started off very good, had some good story set pieces, got very lukewarm towards the ending, is because they realized like there's not much you could really do.
Yeah.
In terms of Outlaws, like, the story synopsis was cool. It's like, you're a part of the criminal underworld during the time of the Empire. And how do you navigate that? That is actually cool because the Empire is an empire. Like, oh, you're smuggling what?
Yep.
How do you get past those things? But then you brought in the new Disney Star Wars gimmicks, a cute and cuddly sidekick. How is this protagonist who's barely 5'5" knocking out
Stormtrooper?
And it's not to say height is a thing, because obviously we've seen characters in Star Wars do amazing things, but then some of those people who are aliens with abilities. But here you have this humanoid person. Like it's not believable, and it really is not. And it was just very, very lackluster. Very, very lackluster. It just was not a good game. You had multiple issues at launch, which transferred over time. You had these get rich quick DLC schemes, and it's like, to me, it kind of felt like the Solo of the Star Wars.
I see what you mean.
Like they're trying to use like some elements of nostalgia, because like, oh yeah, here's a DLC with young Lando Calrissian.
Yeah, and you're doing missions for Jabba
that deja vu was starting to kick in. I was like, bro, like y'all, because we saw the trend with the last trilogy. Like, bro, these are just remix stories that you're trying to do. I was like, oh yeah, a young smuggler with that animal sidekick. Okay.
Where have I seen this before?
It's just like, yeah, bro. Like there was just some parts that it just was not good, man. And yes, Star Wars, like I said, is going through a burnout. Battlefront 2 was a success after all the changes. Fallen Order and Jedi Survivor were good ones. Andor did pretty well, because Andor, stands on its own in terms of just great, excellent writing and excellent actors.
It's unfortunate that not many people watch season 2. I think that speaks to the burnout of like, it's not because it wasn't good. It's just people saw Star Wars and their eyes glazed over, unfortunately.
Yeah. But it's just, like Star Wars as a whole is just going through a burnout, man. Like they've done so much to a point. It's like, what more can you really do? Like, is to the point, and then even with certain people still don't really trust after the fallout of the third trilogy. Like it was just not good. Mandalorian brought some new life, and but then now you could tell it's starting to go like the Disney route. Oh yeah, here's a movie with him and his cute and cuddly sidekick. I was like, you mean to tell me after this emotional season 3, this is where we go?
See, it's one of these things, and it's actually, I think, one of like 2 topics we're gonna cover tonight where I'm of 2 minds to some degree, where I'm like, you're absolutely right in everything you said. I do think Star Wars is going through a period of definitely fatigue, right? Definitely exposure fatigue of like, okay, there's clearly not enough quality control, where it's like even the things that are good aren't that good, where it's like, oh, Obi-Wan. Then you have like Ahsoka, which was like, this was better, but so it's like you kind of have this thing where like you're not really getting like must-watch Star Wars media for the most part. And then when it comes to the games, that's kind of where like I give a little bit of pushback of like, well, this fatigue didn't start last year. Like this fatigue has kind of been around for a while. So it's like you can't say it didn't do well because of the fatigue when Jedi Survivor is still sold really, really well. You know, where Battlefront is putting up record numbers as we speak right now. You know, like clearly it's like when an IP is that big, it's kind of like with Marvel. It's like, yeah, there's superhero fatigue, quote unquote, to a degree, but when there's enough quality in the product, there's enough of like you built up enough audience that things will still do numbers. And I think it kind of goes back to what you first said of like, I'm with you. I'm like, I just don't think Outlaws have what it takes. Like I've been seeing all these theories, you know, go around of like our Star Wars games that don't include a lightsaber holding protagonist doomed to fail. I'm like, I don't think so. I think if you had kind of, like you said, the whole thing of her working in the underbelly of the Federation, I think is a great premise for a plot. You know, it's the mascot thing, not the greatest idea, but you know, you're not gonna get everything you want. But it's just like you didn't give her enough things to be interesting on her own, right? Or even just like interesting encounters of like, does she run into a Jedi during some of her dark trades? Is she chased down by one? You know, does she run into some of the bounty hunters that are in this universe because she's in these, you know, these dark trades and dark dealings? I think there's a lot of things you could have done, a lot of Easter eggs you could have thrown in, a lot of mechanics you could have included. Because, you know, like speaking of what, you know, we said last part about Ghost of Yote, this isn't a trained, honorable person. This is a scavenger who's doing whatever she can. So maybe she gets a blaster from somewhere she's not supposed to for a weapon upgrade. And so, you know, like there's just different things you could do. Finds jet boots. Like just different things you could do to kind of like have your own stamp on it. And I feel like because you weren't able to do copy paste recognizable IP and have it work, now it's, oh, well, you know, Star Wars. You know where Star Wars is at. It's like, nah, fam. Nah. Like, and that's why I said with Ubisoft, it's just like they're getting to a point where it's like, I'm starting to have personally less and less empathy for how that company's going to play out in 4 to 5 years. But like, if you tell me by 2030, Tencent has bought them out completely, we ain't getting no more Assassin's Creed, no more. I'm like, well, it was, you can only point at the mirror. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm like, it was no one's fault but their own. Of like, fam, like, what did you expect? Look at the things that they've been saying and doing. People like, yeah, people who are asking you to find a way to offline your game so they don't end up like the Crew, and you're telling us, yeah, no, nah, that's too much work. It's like, it's too much work to have an offline mode in the game. What?